to unmute yourself. We have a little change of format this evening. The Economic Development Corp, because of some prior constraints and scheduling, would like to start the meeting off first. We will then go to our public session and then go to the next presenter, mental hygiene, health and mental hygiene on rats. One question for EDC. You want to take, because I was a little confused by the emails, but it seems like somebody from EDC will be staying on. Oh, there you are, Nathan. How are you? Is Nathan going to be staying on?
Yeah, hey, how's it going, everyone?
Because you're going to present on the questions that we sent first. Do you want to take questions and comments, or do you want to get out of the room and leave all of that for Nathan, and we can keep him hostage here until he answers everything?
Is that whatever you guys do? I'm more than happy to field any questions you guys have. Yeah, don't go harsh on EDC.
Okay.
But no, right. here to answer any questions you guys have, and,
okay.
And I can talk as well. There's more.
So I'm saying you'll do the questions after they, before we go into anything else on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, super. All right, that was easy. So I guess we'll turn it over to Gianna. Will you be presenting? Answering your questions?
Nathan will be answering.
Oh, Nathan's doing everything.
Okay,
gotcha. All right.
Yeah, I can just dive right into it.
Super.
So good evening, everyone. It's good to talk with you guys again. I'm not sure. I know I spoke with Community Board 4 back in April, kind of at the outset of Cleanup Core. I'm not sure if anyone here was on that committee. Sorry that you guys have to listen to me again tonight, but no, happy to talk with you guys, talk more about the work we're doing at EDC and how it affects you guys, not just in your district, but questions you might have about the citywide programs, or just any more information that you guys are looking for, or ways that we can work together as part of engagement is certainly something we're always open to as well. So I am an assistant vice president here at NYC EDC, and I run our city cleanup corps, our city cleanup corps arm for the mayoral initiative, the city cleanup corps. And what that entails for EDC is 2 quality of life programs. The first is our Graffiti-Free Nyc Program, and I know you guys sent in some questions, and that's always there's always a lot of interest about that program. So that's the first pillar of the cleanup core. And then the second is our Clean NYC Clean Streets program. And that's actually a relatively newly designed program that I put together last fall, actually. And that works to serve as basically the city's first street by street, task force to assist the Department of Sanitation in keeping our streets clean. So those 2 pillars, graffiti and Clean NYC, make up EDC's cleanup core initiative. And what the initiative is it's a dual mission, 2-pronged initiative. The first is, obviously, it's a very robust jobs initiative to create jobs for New Yorkers. So far, EDC alone has hired nearly 150 workers throughout the city. So that's the first aim of the program. And then the second is obviously as a major quality of life initiative. This was, announced at a time last year when there were serious concerns and anxieties that the city no longer cared about quality of life issues after significant cutbacks during the pandemic. I'm sure you guys on this committee are well aware of that, and that was really felt in the community. That was something that, obviously EDC cares about very deeply. And that's kind of been the impetus and what our value proposition for the program is how do we aid in the city's recovery to show that the The city's open for business. We care about quality of life concerns, and we care about bringing people back into the city to do business, to live, to work, and they feel safe in their communities. So that's kind of the snippet, the high level overview of what I do and what EDC's Cleanup Corps mission is. And so with that, I'd be more than happy to dive right into it with any questions you guys have or follow-ups for more explanation. But I hope that wasn't too long-winded of a way of giving a brief overview into what we do and what EDC's role is.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I think for right now we want to get a little bit more into the graffiti aspect and maybe hear a little bit more about the cleanup. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to the lead of our Street Life Committee, who formulated a number of questions for you, and that's Blake Caruso. So,
yeah,
Blake,
thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Nathan. So, I think it would be helpful for the community to understand the status of the Graffiti-Free NYC program, since, as you mentioned, last time we'd spoken, the program was cut or paused, due to the budget. But, I think if I'm hearing correctly, it's back up and running. So things like, how are areas prioritized, how businesses can request cleanup, and, what that process and time frame looks like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great question. And it's funny because there's been so many different iterations of the program and so many different life cycles. And you're right that in April of, so just to give a quick backstory, in April of 2020, as many of you might know, both programs were put on indefinite funding pause. That was, during the very difficult budget cuts needed to be made. And unfortunately, our programs were both, funding was suspended indefinitely. Come fall of 2020, actually, was the announcement of initial funding for Clean NYC. Now, graffiti, there still was no word on graffiti funding, but for the Clean NYC Streets Cleaning Program, there was an initial allotment of funding given in fall of 2020. Fast forward to the mayor's State of the City speech in January of 2021, where he made the pronouncement of the creation of the City Cleanup Corps. And that kind of is what finally got kickstarted back for a massive package of funding. And that's where we're now in the fortunate position where we've been in the last year, where we were able to restart the graffiti program in May of 2021 with the renewed funding. I can happily say the program is up and fully operational. It has been for over 6 months now. And then the Clean NYC program has been operating for over a year now. And so that's where we stand with funding. We have funding through the end of FY22. I can't really speak with more confidence now about future. Certainly, we are very confident in what the value that we bring and what the value that our programs bring to the city is. And I think that's actually why it's really important to be talking with you guys and talking with like local members of the community, so we can really all understand what the buy-in for the programs is, how vital they are to the community and why funding is necessary moving forward. So that's a point about the current state of the funding. As to how the programs operate, it's a little bit different in terms of they operate a little bit differently. And I can, excuse me if I'm gonna go into a little bit of too much nuance here, but you can certainly ask me any follow-up questions. So graffiti is an entirely service request driven service. It's driven by 311 complaints or service requests, entirely driven by public demand. It's fully democratized and it's free for public use. Anyone in the city at any property can request services for graffiti removal. It doesn't have to be their property. It doesn't have to be the community they live in. And so there's no, there's no pre-established inputs or, prior determined locations. It's all driven by public demand for the graffiti program. The Clean NYC program is a little bit different. It is based on, we create basically cleaning routes to address areas in the city that are twofold, that are one of highest need and most under-resourced. And so you might say, well, how do we determine that? And there's a couple ways, a couple things we look at. The first has historically been through the mayor's published list of 33 neighborhoods that are of highest need. This was his list published in, I believe, January of 2021. It's basically a list of the neighborhoods that have been most affected by the economic and social impacts of COVID-19. So that's the starting point we used. We also look at neighborhoods that don't have a corresponding business improvement district in their neighborhood. And why we look at that is specifically to target the neighborhoods that are of highest need. And so we're looking at areas that have been identified as highest need, areas that don't have a local bid to perform similar services. And then we also look at commercial and foot traffic data to help inform us. So basically, we're trying to put together metrics that identify areas of the city that are of high need and are also under-resourced. And so that's, kind of the determinations we make when it comes to the Clean Streets program.
Got it. And for the graffiti program, so you're saying that if somebody puts in a 311 request, then Graffiti-Free NYC will go and inspect the site. What's the backlog, if there is any? And, what's the typical turnaround time from request to remediation?
Yeah, no, those are good questions. We don't do prior inspections before cleaning. Our team works with DSN, and what I mean by that is our team works with DSNY to create route sheets. The first time our teams will see a site is on site, is when they get to they scope out the site. For the most part, we can address any graffiti removal. We have a really nimble and capable technologies. There are a couple caveats. If, for instance, a building is above the second floor, that's something we don't have access to, or if it's there's sensitivities around, like if it's a highway or if it's DOT property, or if it might be unsafe for our team. But for the most part, we're able to pretty much address any graffiti removal request. As for what typical turnaround times have been, we aim for a 30-day turnaround time from at the time of ownership consent clearance to then cleaning. Now, I do want to make a point that doesn't necessarily, it actually doesn't mean the time of 311 request. How the process works is you submit a 311 request, and then DSNY goes about verifying ownership consent. And so after DSNY has verified ownership consent, EDC then has the green light to be dispatched to clean the property. And so that's certainly, efficiency is certainly another really important value proposition for our team. That's why making sure we have the funding and continued funding in place to put staff, to hire the staff we need to continue to scale up. Not only do we want to be able to address as many neighborhoods and as many properties as possible, we want to make sure that we're being as responsive as possible.
Got it. And is there a way to track the requests that originate in our district and, what stage of that process it is at? For example, if it's getting held up by an ownership acceptance?
Yeah, the best resource would be reaching out directly to someone at at the Department of Sanitation. They are the overseers of the 311 database. So the way to think of it is EDC is responsible for full operational control and strategy for the program. And then DSNY has domain over kind of ownership, consent, and data collection, within their 311 and tag database. And so they're a good resource to reach out to if you have a particular question about submitting a 311 request, or if there was a question about ownership consent, they would definitely be a good resource.
Got it.
I think I know most of you here, but I'm on the EDC side, on the government community relations team here. Just wanted to add something, just because I know Nathan, Blake, to your question, is really about efficiency and how to like make sure that we know what's going on and where things are being held up, right? I think, Nathan's group has been very responsive and helpful. And one of the things that could be helpful from the community board is if you have direct access to the business owner, sometimes that is helpful. So if you're able to connect us directly with them to get the paperwork in order, that sometimes can be helpful and expedite. And once everything is in place, I've seen Nathan's team literally turn things around within, a few days, right? And they're out there and get the work done. But it's mostly making sure that that connection is two ways.
Great. And on the Clean NY Streets program, I think we're maybe less familiar with that program, since we have heard from the DSNY, just about the regular street cleaning and basket pickups. But can you talk a little bit more about how this program, operates in conjunction with DSNY?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very understandable that there's a little less public knowledge out there. It's a new program. You guys, Blake, you must not have seen my my recent media appearance on Pick 11 in East Harlem. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, so Clean NYC is a relatively new program. So again, to backtrack a little bit, the original Clean NYC program was announced in 2016, if you guys may or may not remember, as an initiative, as a de Blasio initiative. The current state of Clean NYC, it has the same nomenclature and the same branding. It's actually a little bit different of a program. It operates during the daytime as a street cleaning program. And it arose basically out of the severe cutbacks to DSNY that took place during the pandemic. And as many of you, I'm sure, are acutely aware and understood as part of the community, there were significant concerns about street uncleanliness, about neighborhood deterioration, about just general neglect of trash and cleanliness in neighborhoods. There actually is no street by street cleaning agency in New York City. That's actually, people might not know that, but there actually isn't. And so that's where we've come into play. We kind of like where we've stepped in. And what we have is we've actually created 21 distinct cleaning routes across the 5 boroughs. And so we have teams dedicated to those routes across the city, whether it be, in parts of Manhattan or Brooklyn or Queens. And they work either 2 or 3 times a week at that particular site to do intensive cleanings. And why we think that's really important is to have intensive and continued cleaning. It really establishes, not only does it make our impact clear in the community, it establishes buy-in from the community. We've been in communities and neighborhoods cleaning those areas for 3-4 months. We get amazing public feedback from business owners, from local community stakeholders about the tangible improvements they've seen. And so with you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, Community Board 4, what is the state of, because we are always looking to engage with different communities to see, as we add staff, as we look to scale up the program, what are other parts of the city that we can expand into? I guess I'd ask you guys,
Nathan,
what is this?
And
Did someone have a
I was going
question?
to ask you to jump in on your question. Is it possible for us to get a list? You mentioned these routes. Is it possible to get a list of what routes are in effect in our community board, which runs from 14th Street up to 59th, pretty much 8th to the river, and maybe even some of the accomplishments that you've done in our community board, so we can get the word out and maybe give it a little bit push, so people appreciate what is going on, because the cleanliness issue as well as the rat issue are two major issues in all communities, and it might help us to promote your programs if people knew what was going on, or advise us as to what other, there's several blockers, there are many block associations that would like to take advantage of this. So part of our request would probably be some sort of information on where have you been in our community. Thanks.
Yeah, no, we can definitely, and I think that's a great thing to bring up about, we're always looking to talk with the communities, talk about what our impact has been. We want to, broadcast the impact that we've had, not just citywide, but also with communities. So we can definitely follow up with you guys on that. What our graffiti removal impact in your particular district has been. We're able, we have a lot of great data tracking tools that allow us to hone in on like what specific areas of the city we've serviced. And so we can definitely provide you guys with some information and talk about what our impact has been.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to pass it over to the other committee members as well, but I mean, I guess perspective is that it doesn't seem like, the cleanliness on the street is necessarily at a great place, despite the program being operational for a few months. And so, I think we just need to learn a little more about the actual target areas in our district and the way that, this board or our neighbors can help to identify those areas that might still be problematic. And, I think it's also thinking through the relationship between this program and DSNY, since, the money could have gone to some of the areas that had been cut on the DSNY side. So I struggle a bit with how this program supplements, the union work and some of the already in place function of DSNY.
Yeah, well, that's a good, certainly is something that's very worthwhile to bring up. I'm certainly, I'm always want to hear about like local feedback from the community. Obviously, you guys know best about the issues that are affecting what neighborhoods. Is there particular like certain streets or core, like when you say there's been persistent problems, are you talking citywide, or are you talking more localized from like your vantage point? I guess my question be.
I mean, some areas that have come up at this committee meeting has been, 9th Avenue, for example. And, I guess I know Hell's Kitchen more than Chelsea. So, but I know 9th Avenue in the 40s and 50s have been problematic, as well as 10th Avenue, around the same area. And, maybe someone can kind of chime in on the Chelsea side as well.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. It is super important for us to get the feedback about local communities where there seems to be persistent problems. And then that's really helpful for us to, then strategize and engage as partners and say, okay, what makes sense in terms of, how do we, if we need to scale up, how do we add additional routes? I would love for EDC to be at a workforce of, whatever it would take, whatever the staff number is to keep every street in the city clean. It would probably be 10,000. Unfortunately, we only have, we have 150 staff members. And, we're really proud of, the way we've been able to really make a tangible impact in the city. So I very much understand, frustration if a particular street or like a particular neighborhood, unfortunately, And like I mentioned at the top, I think a lot of this genuinely does stem from there is no citywide agency tasked with keeping every city street clean throughout the city. DSNY is tasked, and I don't want to put words in their mouth or speak to their mission's charter, but they are primarily tasked with large scale trash and compost pickup. They do not, work to keep every single street clean, and beautified. That's largely where business improvement districts come into play. And that's why there is a proliferation, and there has been, of business improvement districts. For you guys, I do know, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you guys have in Community Board 4, I was just looking at a bid map. You guys have some bid coverage down by like 42nd Street by Lincoln Tunnel, and be up by 59th or 60th. I'm not totally sure. Do you guys, can you guys speak to, like, do you guys have business improvement district presence? Is that something that you've talked about? What is the latest, I guess, for that? Because that they can oftentimes be a really helpful partner as well.
Yeah. We have the meatpacking district runs, up until about 17th Street. There's a Hudson Yards bid. So there are several bids. There are several adjoining areas. A Flatiron bid kind of bumps up against Chelsea in a number of areas. But it's a little difficult getting a bid. I think some of the block associations are looking at doing business improvement, not business, but associations rather than full-fledged bids, as it seems that kind of owners getting that off the ground. So we do have a number of bids that are active, mostly in the business areas, of course, but a lot of Chelsea is residential. So it doesn't work all that well. But we can maybe try to put a list if you want to somehow reach out to them and get that to you.
I think for us, it's always helpful to know what the feedback is from the community. And this is actually something that we've experimented with how do we engage directly with communities to see what their needs are and to see if there's a gap in that other city or private sector services aren't serving in a part of the city, because that directly fulfills our mission of high impact and under-resourced. And so, that's definitely something I think, our ED team can discuss more with you guys. Okay. Like I said, you guys obviously being in the community would know better, if there is a coverage gap. And so I think we're always...
We've got a question for you from Jessica and then Kid.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Nathan. I have two questions. One connected, I guess, to that point you just made. We've written quite a number of letters about the issues regarding sanitation and street cleanliness and just some of the challenges we've been facing over the last 20 months. Should we have been directing those letters, copies of those letters, and maybe we did, so apologies, but should we have been directing those letters to you as well? So that you, as a way of providing that sort of testimony or that live report of what the issues that we're seeing are, to me, that seems like an easy way to just make sure your office is in the loop. Is that, I don't even know if that's possible, but is that something that you would advise, or how do you like to be kept informed of those issues?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess I would maybe, Raddy, kick it over to you just about the receiving portion.
I appreciate it. I think it's certainly like a citywide effort, right? And it's a lot of coordination amongst agencies. So, I think it is a separate, I think the two are separate overall issues in terms of making sure that sanitation related items are related, directly to sanitation, because those are the folks that are actually going to do something about it. I think in terms of bringing people along so that people like Nathan understand, like, you know, this is an area where we're having a lot of trouble consistently. You know, I think that's where we're having direct dialogue between the community board and us. Secondly, is probably something that makes sense. I feel like, you know,
Yeah.
whereas if it were a DOT issue, I would let DOT handle their things, you know, and then sure, you can let us know things for awareness separately, but ultimately they should be the ones addressing their issues.
That clarity is helpful.
Yeah, I guess Jessica, just to glean more, was like a letter just of kind of like general inquiry into the uncleanliness of the district.
I mean, it was alert. I mean, Blake has really championed this, so I don't want to speak your book, Blake, but like the effort to really identify places in our district that needed attention and the suggestion of reinstatement of routes, but more importantly, just frankly, in some cases, they felt like cries for help. Like we had real issues in our district and we needed people to be aware of them. And maybe it just, you know, it's just good to know that there's someone else who needs to hear that message. And maybe we just need to think more creatively or specifically about how to get that to you.
Yeah, and we're and that's kind of where my team comes in. Like I've mentioned times, we're looking at what, you know, when we make our case, not just, you know, when the new administration comes in, but just moving forward. We want to make a strong case about here's what our value add is to the city. Here's, you know, how we make a direct impact in communities of high need. And so, you know, and the best way we can do that, and we do that, is by partnering with local communities and people and community stakeholders. So we can definitely talk more about this, you know, and you guys could reach out to me to maybe, and the public affairs team about setting up time. If there is like a really specific, okay, here's a problem we've identified, here's what the need is, and here's how we, you know, we and hopefully EDC could work to really add value that isn't being addressed. You know, that's what we're always looking to do.
I think that's right, Nate. Exactly. You know, I think my goal is just to make sure that, you know, when folks like DSNY get their letter, it's clear to them, like, we believe this is a DSNY issue and we want you all to address it. Separately though, this is you know, maybe Jesse or others setting up a conversation saying, hey, Nate, we're trying here, we're not getting traction. How can we, is there something here for us to work together to try to figure out?
Great. I did have a second question. I don't want to take all the time, which is, last year, the mayor announced the city cleanup corps with 10,000, like with the goal of hiring 10,000. You had just said a minute ago, you were like, we need 10,000 people. So can you just like reflect on that? Like that seems like that didn't happen. Did that?
No, it did. It did happen.
It did
happen. I can, and so obviously, I only run EDC's arm of the city cleanup corps, but we have as you probably are aware, the city cleanup corps is a multi-agency initiative to hire and staff workers throughout the city. The program that includes dozens of agencies has hired over 10,000 workers actually. EDC's contribution. So the point I was making is that we would love EDC's arm to be as expansive as possible. We would love if our impact, as it related to Blake's question about street cleaning, we'd love if we could, you know, make an impact in every neighborhood, in every borough in the city. But requiring that would require a you know, tongue-in-cheek of like a workforce of like 10,000. But as it comes to the city cleanup corps, the program has achieved its ambitious goal, which we're really happy about, as has EDC. So, you know, that's something we want to talk about as well. We want to talk about what our successes have been this past year.
Okay, thank you.
Kid? All right, Kid will be right back. Nathan, let me ask you a quick question, because I was reading some of the material you sent out, and you seem to be doing a lot of work with the Parks Department. Is that true?
Could you
some work? or some work,
about
but you mentioned
materializing
parks,
that.
you mentioned parks a lot, so I was just curious on how that's going and or how you're working with parks on in those areas.
I'm not, I have to be honest, could you clarify a little bit? I'm not quite sure the communication I've talked about with parks. I'm not quite sure.
I might have misread it, but you know, some of the material that you sent out for us to look at mentioned parks a few times, maybe. No, all right.
I'd have to.
Well, they've been doing a good job. I give you a little credit for that if I can. You know.
Yeah. Hey, we shout out parks. Why not?
Okay. All right. Let me go back to Kit then. There he goes. Yeah.
Yeah, we try to work with, have a lot of active partnerships is what I would say. With, I think one of the good things about what EDC's contribution and kind of the role we play is of flexibility and responsiveness. That's something we really pride ourselves on. And so a lot of city agencies feel like they can come to us, feel like we're a really good partner. And so we do a lot of work with city agencies, local business improvement districts, you know, other stakeholders. And so I think we all work under the same mission of helping up the city.
All right, so you're like special forces in some respect.
We've been called the Navy SEALs. Someone from City Hall, they did use that term.
Okay. All right. I think Kit has a question for you.
Yeah, sorry everybody. Mom is in California, so dad is on duty. I realize you are not DSNY, but I'm curious if you could just give me a little bit of the backstory on why they aren't charged with cleaning up block by block citywide. It seems like we have a curious system where there's an agency that ostensibly could be in charge, and then there's bids providing supplemental services, and then you all are, you know, a quick strike force. What is the rationale between having such a disjointed approach?
Yeah, that's a good question. Truthfully, I'm not entirely sure. I can't speak with a lot of authority about kind of the history of DSNY's mission or anything in that regards. You are right that it is a lot of, there is a lot of actors at play. Obviously, there's been a huge proliferation of business improvement districts. I think that was largely driven by community demand for what they saw as streets not being cleaned. And so, you know, you see like the Grand Square Alliance, the Times Square Alliance, the Grand Central Partnership, the Union Square Partnership. I'm getting all of them mixed up. They all sound the same. So there's definitely a lot of, I think everyone in the city, right, cares about keeping streets and neighborhoods clean. And I think that's what's caused, you know, this demand for so many different parties and actors to spring up. But yeah, I think that's kind of where a lot of the confusion comes from, or that's where a lot of like this, you know, frustration. And I understand where you guys come from, where you say, hey, it doesn't seem like, you know, someone is out on my street every single day, because, you know, they might not be. And that's just the truth of the matter. But that's certainly where EDC's funding picture and EDC's contribution and our being able to staff our programs, that's why, you know, the case we make and we're trying to make is super important. You know, we want to be able to have as big of an impact as possible, because we know that there are a lot of neighborhoods that feel neglected.
I appreciate that. And it seems like the bids sort of gravitate towards the areas of more wealth and privilege. And so I especially appreciate that you all are trying to go to the parts of the city that are getting under-resourced and less well-served. It just seems like the root of the problem is somebody should be in charge of doing it all and doing it all well. And that feels like a gap that is not yet being addressed. So I just wonder, what is the bigger sort of policy solution as opposed to chipping away at it from various angles?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I think the best thing we can probably do now is, we have a lot of different actors that are serving different roles. We have DSNY, who plays a very important role. We have local bids, who a lot of communities really love the presence that they have. And then, we come in. And so I think probably just from a policy standpoint is, and I know EDC's approach is, work with resources that we've been given, and let's try and position ourselves in the best way possible for showing the value we bring to the city. And that's certainly what my overarching mission is, and the goals that we have with the new administration. So yeah, to long story short, I don't know if there's a Deus Ex Machina like coming down to solve New York City's graffiti and traffic. I hope not, because then I might be out of a job. But no, I'm kidding. But I would say we probably just need to work within and do the best job we can with the resources being most efficient that we currently have.
Thank you for that. I appreciate everything that you and your team are doing.
Thank you, Kip.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the committee at this point before we go see if there's someone from the public and then we come back for a wrap up? Anybody in the public? I don't see any hands up from the public. Oh, Leslie, back to you.
I just wanted to say, Nathan, that I just put in a request for graffiti removal, so you're on the clock officially.
We'll make sure, Leslie, I'll make sure that that I hit ownership denied consent for that property.
Yeah, cool. And I did see one of your brand new trucks out on the street the other day.
It was an orange graffiti truck?
Yeah, beautiful truck.
Yeah.
Beautiful. How many of those? How many of those do you have running around the city?
We currently have about 10 active trucks, and so we're really we've done an amazing job, and our team has done a really amazing job at basically rebuilding the program from scratch. The program was, like I mentioned, it was shut down for 14 months, and we've rehired entirely new staff. Well, not entirely new staff, but we've had to put the infrastructure in place to rehire staff, get our fleet back up and running, get the program infrastructure in place. And so we're really thrilled to have the program running at full capacity as we, go into the new administration, the new year. That's what our focus is.
All right, cool. I don't see anybody from the public with their hands up. Jesse, am I correct? No.
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay.
I think a lot of folks are actually, I see a few familiar names there for, I know they're interested in the Department of Health's discussion.
Yeah, I think so. All right, cool. So we'll end that part. Blake, do we need to go back on this? Is there anything you want to follow up on? Do we need some sort of a letter or anything? Or
sorry, guys, my battery died.
Yeah, I mean, I think
thank you for coming in with some discussion, some suggestions or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be appropriate to do a thank you and kind of provide the information about the program, but I'm a little bit of a question mark on support for the program in that there are other things that we've asked for support from DSNY, which is largely the same sort of function, and so I think it's hard to kind of reconcile the budget between the two.
Yeah.
Since I'm correct that this is not a union, these are not union jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
They aren't union jobs, but we work with, I'm actually really, really proud of the work that we've done with the labor consultants. We have 2 labor consultants. One is a social service organization that gives jobs to the formerly homeless and incarcerated. And then the second is a certified MWBE, which is minority women owned business enterprise. So this is actually the first time in the history of this contract that we've brought on a certified MWBE firm. So they aren't union jobs, but we're really, really thrilled that not only are we providing jobs, we're providing jobs with a mission.
Got it.
Blake, do you remember this? We talked about this last time. Remember, this was a DSNY program pre-COVID exclusively, right, Nathan? Or am I wrong with that?
Yeah, Leslie, were you the one who was? Yeah, you were like you were
Yes.
up in arms about it. I remember. Yeah, I remember that. You were very upset.
I was
that-
curious why it, so, and Blake just brought it up. Thank you, Blake. But it went away, and now they kind of shifted it from DSNY to this, what Kit was saying, like kind of multi-armed.
So that was, I think, it was long before the pandemic. I think this was maybe like 2005, 2008 or something, long before our tenure. I'm not even sure then if DSNY had a street by street mission, but I think it's also primarily, we were talking about the graffiti program in that regard. DSNY used to be tasked with actually some operations. That now lives, like we said, yes, the operations now lives with EDC, which I think is not to beat our chest, but I think that's for the best. I think we are the best agency and best positioned to work most effectively to remove graffiti for the city. But yeah, that whatever change that took place years ago, we did talk about that though.
So to the committee, am I hearing something more of a support for this, for the continuation of this program? Is there?
So funding has been,
So
funding is
you're,
active. What's that,
you're
Alan?
just good till 2022 at this point.
Funding has been put in place until the end of fiscal year 2022, which is June 30th, 2022. We certainly are making the case and will make the case for continued funding for the program. These are programs that have historically received some level of annual funding. Both the Graffiti and Clean NYC program, I think it's long been understood by community boards, by council members. The programs are very popular with local council members. I think the value of the program has long been understood. And so we want to get back to that. We want to get back to an understanding and an environment where the city cares about quality of life issues. So that's certainly what our mindset is.
All right. So
At least on the graffiti side, I think on the graffiti side, maybe that's something that we had already, discussed. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels. I think, that might be worthy of a letter of support there, and also with information about how to request and the process there, since it was new to us. I'm sure it's new to a lot of folks.
okay. I hear a motion on the floor for a support letter, something that involves also some information regarding where the routes are and what some of the accomplishments have been. Blake, you want to make a motion on that?
Really quickly before we make the
Or
motion,
Kit?
Blake, I'm assuming you're open to writing this letter.
Yeah.
It feels like maybe we should add in some of the commentary around staffing. I think it's laudable that there is been an effort to employ folks who are formerly incarcerated and to partner with a minority or women-owned business. At the same time, I think the lack of union jobs is something that we should give feedback on. So do you feel comfortable saying, we appreciate the good efforts that have been made. We would also suggest considering union employment in the future. Does that land, Blake?
Yeah, and do you think we should write about the cleanup side as well, or just the graffiti side? Because, I'm not sure if, is it the same issue with the labor on the graffiti side? that side is also not union.
Sorry, yeah, the neither of the organizations we partner with is a union-based organization, so that is correct.
Got it. Okay. I mean, my inclination anyway is to write just the graffiti side and not the cleanup side, because I think on the cleanup side, there's still some question mark about, how it is adjacent to and not overlapping with DSNY's responsibilities. I don't know if anyone on the committee would disagree with that, but my motion would be to just write a letter in support of the Graffiti-Free Program, with some explanation of how neighbors can request the services, and make that point, Kit, that you just made about, laudable to employ the formerly incarcerated and support minority and women-owned businesses in that process, but consider union labor as well.
Second that.
Okay. Anybody opposed to that?
We still need to have an actual yay from everybody.
Still
not
need a
just
yay?
silence.
Does EDC get to vote?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. In favor of? Opposed?
Maria, is that a yes? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Maria is a yes.
And then Mercedes, is that a yes? Yeah, got it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sounds unanimous. Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Well, thank you guys for the invite. I'm always happy to talk with community boards, and you guys care about the issues in your neighborhood, and I want to talk about issues that you guys have, how we can partner, and what the work we do and what we bring to the city's recovery, because I think it's really important for us to talk about and to identify continued areas of need. So I appreciate the invite, and it was great talking with you guys.
And as you requested about information about localities, we'll try to dig into that with various block associations and see what we can get for you.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Enjoy the holidays. All the best. Thank you.
You too, everyone. Enjoy the holidays.
Could I make a suggestion, Alan, just because Carolyn's been very patient here from Department of Health? Would it be all right if, unless there's someone from the public that has a time constraint, could we go directly into
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't look like anyone's got their hand up to go into the public session, so we can go into the rats right now.
Okay, great.
Because I think that's what everybody, as you said, that's what everybody's here for.
Rats get butts and seats, as they say.
I did want to recognize Jordan Feiner from Speaker Johnson's district offices here to listen in and maybe shed some light on what the councilman's office is doing in terms of the rats also. Okay. Caroline, super, thank you.
All right, thank you all for having me. And it was actually interesting for me to listen in on EDC's presentation, because I also have Cleanup Corps staff that were helping bridge the gap for us when we had staff reassigned for COVID related work. We were given funding to bring some Cleanup Corps people on board. So, but I only have about 16 of them. Oh, sorry, my screen just went out. Hopefully you can still hear me. So I'm going to answer the questions that Jesse has forwarded from the board first. And then if my answers bring up other questions, we can kind of go from there. I'm just going to pull them up and go through them one by one, and then feel free to interrupt me at any point if something's unclear. So the first question was, what has been the health department's most effective strategy for rat control? And what are the indicators being used to assess our performance in this area? So basically, we have a program that I run at the health department called Neighborhood Rat Indexing, and it's a neighborhood-based strategy to address rat problems, where we go into an area and we inspect every single property on a block, And then we inspect every single block in a neighborhood. And this allows us to calculate a failure rate. So the number of properties that fail our inspections for some kind of rat activity or conditions conducive to rats. And neighborhood level failure rates is the main indicator that we use. So the percentage of properties that have rat activity. Neighborhood indexing allows us to identify neighborhoods that have the highest burden of rat control, and it removes the noise that 311 creates, because as you may or may not know, certain neighborhoods complain a lot more than others. And so, and that can kind of create some noise. So for example, right now, Community Board 7 and Community Board 10 in Manhattan have the highest number of 311 complaints, but that doesn't mean they have the highest burden of rat activity. It just means they have the highest number of people willing to submit a 311 complaint. The only way we can really identify the highest burden of rat activity is by doing neighborhood level rat indexing. And the department has funding to do rat indexing in select neighborhoods throughout the city. And when we do rat indexing and we identify a high burden of rats, we assign a case manager to an area to help kind of shepherd that neighborhood through rat remediation efforts. And in the case of Community Board 4, that person is our case manager, Frances Dotino, who many of you may know. She's an inspector. She's very qualified, and she's the case manager that I have assigned to Community Board 4. Her job is to look at neighborhood rat indexing results, to do follow-up enforcement inspections on the properties that fail, to do surveys on public properties such as parks, and other spaces we call street areas, like street trees and sewers and catch basins. And then she also helps communicate back to neighborhoods. Now, many of you may be thinking, well, where has Frances been? And she recently came back to us. She came back to us in mid-November, but all of the case managers that were assigned to do this neighborhood level support were reassigned to do COVID during the pandemic. So Frances was one of the staff, and actually I also was reassigned for 2020 and about half of 2021. We were all doing COVID related work instead of this neighborhood level rat response, which is why I actually don't have good rat indexing data for the last year or so. Now that I have staff back, we are getting back to doing rat indexing, and I'm getting ready in January of 2022 to relaunch comprehensive neighborhood level rat indexing throughout Manhattan to kind of bring the city back from where we are now, which is in a not so great place in terms of rat activity, back to where we were in 2019 pre-pandemic, when actually I have to say we were really excited about the direction we were going in, and really pleased that rat activity and 301 complaints were really coming down citywide. Okay, so I'm going to pause there and ask any questions about that. I have a couple of other indicators I could also talk about.
Kit?
You mentioned there's sort of a spectrum of community boards where you see more reports, but maybe less of an issue. Community boards where you see more of an issue, but less reports.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious where we are on the scale, or at least where we were last time you had reliable data.
So that's a great question. And I was actually looking at the November results for Community Board 4, and I'd say you fall right in the middle in terms of Manhattan. So you're not rated as worst of the worst in terms of rat failure rates, but you're right in the middle. You're also not faring as well as some of the less densely packed neighborhoods. I think you do have pockets of heavy rat activity, which is why we assigned a case manager. So Hell's Kitchen, Clinton area continues to have higher rat activity than other neighborhoods in Manhattan. That has a lot to do with the high density of residential plus food service establishments, high foot traffic. I mean, it's a popular neighborhood. And unfortunately, food service establishments coupled with high foot traffic, coupled with high residential and popularity of neighborhood tends to lead to rat activity. So this neighborhood has been flagged for us as having higher rat activity than others. And same with Chelsea. Chelsea's gone up and down over the years. I think right now, rat activity in Chelsea is up. We hope to, we had, again, back in 2019, we were feeling really pleased that failure rates had come down significantly in the Chelsea area, and they were back up again when I last checked. But I'd say in terms of Manhattan, you guys are pretty much middle of the road. And I have one of the reports that I can pull up before I end tonight and just show you what that means. And it also shows the different indicators that I track and look at when I'm monitoring a community board's data. Any other questions I can answer right away?
Yeah, we'll go to Liz and then Jessica.
Sure.
Liz?
Thanks, Alan. Thank you, Carolyn. So CB4 we've written letters regarding outdoor dining, and one point we have made has been the explosive rat population around these outdoor dining structures. I'm on this email that just shows sometimes the trash on the outdoor dining is put on the side of the structure and it's hit by a bike, or or whatever. Or now we're finding that, and this happens a lot maybe outside of our district too, in the village, because they have a lot of closely tight outdoor dining structures, but we're finding up here that the rats are burrowing under the structure, actually. Yep. So we've written letters about this. What is your response, and what can we do specifically with the outdoor dining structures that is really causing a huge problem with the residents around those structures?
So first of all, I want to say, I agree. I've seen a lot of problems with the way the structures are set up. And we think that the way the outdoor dining structures are built is really critical, and if it's not really managed properly, can lead to rat issues. So a couple of things. The garbage management and cleanliness of the structure itself is really important. So we have been advising that restaurants get in there and power wash, bleach, really scrub down these structures every day if they're going to have food waste there, and that no garbage should be left on the curb for more than an hour or two before their private carter picks it up. And disruptions in garbage service caused by the outdoor structures which lead to big garbage pileups, really are fueling some of the rat problems. In addition, the way the structures are constructed, if rats can go underneath the structure and feed, but no one can get under there and clean, then they become what we call harborage. So yeah, I've heard from board 2 that, rats are coming out from underneath the structures and that they're harboring underneath there. And in those cases, we do recommend that the food service establishment have a licensed pest control firm that's treating those spaces, again, weekly. They should be in there weekly.
I think that's the problem we're having, is that sounds like a obvious solution, right? But there's no oversight for that. There's no enforcement for that. There's zero. In fact, I think there's zero to go and tell these restaurants, listen, you got to bleach. No, they're not going to go and get a pest control and bleach on their own.
Yeah.
They're hardly going to do it if you enforce it. So where does that leave? I mean, that sounds great, but where does that leave us?
DOT is the enforcement agency. So it actually, my agency and my program, we don't have enforcement or oversight of the outdoor dining structures. And And sorry, my camera is freezing, so I'm having a hard time. I don't know if this is happening to other people, but the camera is freezing, so I can't tell if you're still speaking. So I apologize if I'm interrupting you. But if you can invite DOT to come and send a representative, my understanding is they got staffing and funding to do enforcement on the outdoor dining structures. My program did not. And so we've been very clear that we are neither staffed nor funded to inspect outdoor dining structures. In addition to that, I don't even know if I have authority to do inspections. My team, when we do an inspection, our authority to enforce is on the property owner, whereas a dining structure is set up by a food service establishment that is permitted by a different program and may just be a tenant of the property owner. So if I'm going to write a ticket, it's going to the owner, and it's completely different enforcement stream. So DOT is permitting the establishment, and they have to do the enforcement. And I really encourage everyone to make sure DOT is hearing the concerns and getting out there to inspect the outdoor dining structures. I have really been frustrated myself in trying to make sure that the restaurants are doing the right thing, and we are seeing the impact on the neighborhoods.
Thank you, Liz. Jessica?
Thank you. And Carolyn, thank you for being so clear on what the action is, because that seems like something we should do. My question though was about this data. Is it publicly available? Is that something, can you direct us to where we can view rad activity in our neighborhood and see those trends over time?
Yeah, so, well, I'll tell you what's publicly available. So all of our inspections are publicly available on the Rad information portal, which is at nyc.gov/rats. And you can click on Rad information portal map, and you can scroll to Community Board 4, and you can load all of the inspections that have occurred in the last 6 months in Community Board 4. And there you'll directly see the results of Francis's walkthroughs, 47th, 48th, 49th Street, all those inspection results. Before I even came online, I made sure everything was up there so that you could see that work. So that's there. In terms of trends over time, I can run those reports and send them to Jesse in an email. I can, just depends on exactly what you want to see. I can show you what the failure rates have been year over year, for example, in Community Board 4, or if you're looking at more granular data, I can show you month over month. Also, if you are really interested in looking at data, everything is up on Open Data NYC, so you can pull the data set off of Open Data. Just let me know what you need, and I can prepare that kind of report.
Great, thank you. I both am personally curious, but also know that as we experience different challenges, that seeing what we experience, what we think we experience in the data, as you said, don't always line up, and being able to have that available, I think, is very beneficial. Thank you.
I agree, and just it really helps us if people check the RAP portal before they complain, because we have been getting a lot of news, and we're in the media a lot about increasing 311 complaints. But I have to say, honestly, what happened is in 2020 and 2021, most of my inspectors were redirected to COVID, and it created very long delays in our complaint response. And because of that, 301 complaints started spiking because people would get frustrated. They'd call in a complaint, no response, no response, no response. They'd call it in again, no response. And so what happened is we have up to a third of our complaints are just duplicates, people calling in the same complaint over and over again. And I'm not saying that that's good. I'm just saying we have an explanation for that because inspectors were doing COVID inspections, not rat inspections. So what used to be a turnaround time of 14 days to respond to a complaint became a turnaround time of 1 to 2 months. And it was frustrating. So people kept calling in complaints. And now that we are no longer deployed to do the HEDA NYC COVID inspections, our turnaround time is resumed, and we're back out there doing the inspections within 14 days of complaint receipt. And it should bring down those duplicates and thus bring down the spiking in 311 complaints that has been in the media so much. Other questions I can answer, and then I can go back to the Jeff list.
Jesse, do you want to jump in on this first?
No, actually, I wasn't sure Carolyn had more, so I thought maybe it'd be good for Carolyn to keep on going just because.
You want me to keep going for a sec?
That's what I suggest, but I know there's other hands raised, so.
Yeah, Kit and then Katie. I think Katie.
I did not sneak in my thank you to you and your team and all the work that they do last time, so thank you. Quick question. My layman's perspective is that a huge part of why we have a rat issue, which we'll probably never be able to completely eliminate, but something that's making it worse is that we keep on putting our trash and recycling in plastic bags on the street. Could you sort of talk me through how big of a factor is that, and how much would something like containerized trash help us out? And what are the other big variables that you would recommend that are probably out of your purview, would meaningfully amplify your team's ability to control the rat population in the city?
Yeah, so yes, storing garbage in plastic bags on the curb creates rat problems. Definitely, that's why people walking down the street are experiencing rat activity at their ankles. It's because that's where we're storing our garbage, and rats need to eat every day, and we are training them here in New York that you come out to feed when New Yorkers put their garbage on the curb in plastic bags. And whether it's a restaurant or a residential establishment, that's what they're eating. That's what they're going for. And the ways that we've encouraged property owners and businesses to deal with it is to minimize the amount of time that garbage sits on the curb, because the longer it's sitting there, the greater the feeding window and the more access rats have to food. Obviously, what we would prefer is for all garbage to be stored in solid containers, and picked up from a state-of-the-art garbage compactor. That would be ideal, right? We've lobbied for large residential buildings to have compactors that could be picked up by sanitation with a tipper, where there's no opportunity for those bags to be sitting on the curb. But there's not enough space in New York for every large residential building to have a compactor. So, one thing you can do, there's a lot of construction in New York. When reviewing new construction plans, you can be very vocal about saying, well, what's the garbage management plan for this building? Will they have a compactor? Where are they going to store their garbage? Because that, already that's going to impact your community. For smaller buildings, for older neighborhoods that have lots and lots of small buildings, I would look into the Department of Sanitation's organics recycling program. They have curbside organics pickup that buildings can voluntarily opt into. It's a big behavior change for the residents of the building, but if you can train people to separate food waste out of the rest of the garbage chain and put it in a hard-sided container, sanitation will pick up those containers directly. And if you want to know more about organics recycling, one of the questions that had come to us was, do we partner with sanitation on anything? And we do work, we work with Department of Sanitation to monitor organics recycling, because both the health department and Department of Sanitation thinks it's one of the long-term solutions to the garbage problems we have here in New York, garbage and rat problems. So I would encourage people to look into that program, and I can give you the contact information for the director of that program.
Yes. Before you go a little further,
yeah.
Quick question on parks. Do you inspect the parks, or is that strictly the Parks Department that does that?
So the answer is both. I have the funding to do the neighborhood rat surveillance work, which means that in the neighborhoods that I'm funded to surveil in, which includes Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, certain blocks in those neighborhoods. And we do park surveys in those areas to help monitor the rat situation in those parks. So I do have park survey results, and we are corresponding with the Parks Department on the findings that we have in those parks, because I am aware that there are some very high rat activity parks. But Parks Department also has their own inspection team. So typically we're communicating back and forth. My inspector's special talent is identifying rat activity. So they may be communicating back to parks of what to look for, where to look for, and how to respond. I can share with you, again, park survey data. I can tell you which ones we're surveying right now. We have recent surveys for, sorry, my computer is freezing, but I know we're doing DeWitt Clinton and several others. I know we're doing Chelsea Park, DeWitt Clinton, and several others in the district. And again, it's when my computer's not frozen, I can send Jesse the park survey data. The other thing that I can do, I had mentioned that we have some city cleanup course staff similar to EDC, and they're making up a small stoppage team that goes in and does borough harassment on earthen burrows in parks and tree pits, and we can send them in. They've already been doing a little bit of work in the district.
Is that a request from 311 or directly to your agency?
You can always ask me or Francis's supervisor, Angela. If you have a park that you're worried about, just shoot one of us an email, and that's the fastest way to get to us. And the other thing that you can do, and Jesse is the champion of this, is coordinate a walkthrough, right? How many walkthroughs have you been on in your career? With and bring us together. So parks and health. If we walk a park together, we can often come up with a game plan right then and there.
Okay. All right. Carolyn, one last question from Katie, and then we'll let you continue on
Okay.
with the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And I had to come into this meeting late, so you may have answered this before, but this is following up about the question of restaurants. And this may sound simplistic, but I guess I'm wondering, like, do you guys have like a little info sheet that we could like pass out to restaurants or something, but that just says like, if you're having rat problems, here are 4 things you could do, or the kinds of, you know what I mean? I'm just wondering if there is some very specific advice that we could help get out there.
Yes, thank you for asking. So yes, on the rat information portal, nyc.gov/rats, there's all kinds of tips and tricks for dealing with rats, including some very simple bullets. In the section titled Information for Businesses and Pest Management Professionals, there is a special page on, for food service establishments. We also gave bullets to DOT to include in their outdoor dining structure guidance. And again, I can send that as a follow-up to you specifically in an email, but it's all in the RAT portal. It's all very available to you. We have downloadable PDFs in multiple languages. And we also have posters and brochures. If you want hard copies of those things, you can call 311 and request orders, or you can just send me an email and say, hey, I like your posters. Can you send me some? And we're happy to have a community assistant bring some to you. The food service establishments, as someone pointed out, you know, it may be kind of idealistic to assume they'll follow our guidelines, but certainly neighborhood pressure always helps. And so, yeah, it would be great if you wanted to share those, you know, 5 best things you can do to reduce rats, which is really just cleaning, and more cleaning.
Cool.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Carry on, Caroline.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the rest of these questions and then I'll check back in. So how should residents report rat problems was the next question. How do we address the reports? So you can report rat problems through 311. 311 you can call or report online. When you call in a 311 complaint, in non-pandemic times, we respond to every complaint within 14 days of receipt. And so what I suggest you do is if you have a rat problem, look at the rat portal map, see if we've already been there to do a recent inspection. If we've been there to do a recent inspection and that property failed the inspection, no, that means we automatically go back. But if you don't see a recent inspection on a property that you're worried about, and you do have a rat sighting to report, you can call 311 and we will initiate a new inspection on that property. As I said before, during COVID, our turnaround time for addressing rat complaints went from about 2 weeks to about 2 months, which increased the duplicate complaints by a lot, and which was frustrating for people and for us. We are now getting on top of that, and I expect our entire backlog of complaints to be cleared by the end of this year, and for us to be back on track by January with more of a proactive neighborhood response and less of a reactive complaint-based response. The second thing you should know, when we're doing an inspection, we always do an initial inspection first. If the property fails the initial inspection, we send the property owner an enforcement order, an order to abate their rat activity. We give them a few weeks to respond and take action, and then we do a compliance inspection. If they fail that second compliance inspection, then they get a summons returnable to oath. They get a fine. It's only $300. But they do get fined. And then in addition to that, if they still have rat activity, we may send one of our exterminators and then we bill them for the time and work of the exterminator. I have the ability to elevate compliances. Francis and I were talking about a property, I guess, on 49th Street today that is already on their 4th compliance. When we elevate compliance, we double the fine. So a 4th compliance violation fine is $2,000. So a lot of times if you have a really persistent bad actor, bad landlord property, let us know who that is, and we can take them up to a $2,000 fine from the $300. So that's a tool we have in our toolbox. Sometimes property owners simply just don't know what to do. And in those cases, we recommend attending one of our free Rad Academies, which are 2-hour-long trainings. We had one tonight. It's they're from 5 to 7 usually. Sometimes we have them in the day. And those are free trainings that are available to property owners and managers to learn how to address rat problems on their properties. The community board or neighborhood associations are welcome to offer to sponsor a Rad Academy. And if you want to sponsor a Rad Academy, you can let me know, and we can bring Rad Academy to Community Board 4 or directly to a block association. If you want to do a lot of organizing and have maybe all the property owners on a block, just do one special academy just for them. The last thing about Academy is if property owners are interested, we will bring you some rat resistant trash cans as a thank you for attending the Academy, and we'll drop them off with the host of the event. Let's see, I'll go to, I think there's only 1 or 2 more questions.
Please.
So the next question was, are plans being made to dedicate more personnel to rat control given the increasing prevalence of the issue? And I'll say at this time, no. But I think what's important to understand is that we were staffed pretty well in 2019. And the reason why you're feeling like you haven't seen us in a while is because we were all doing COVID work. But now that we're back, hopefully you'll start to feel our presence again. And I'm saying hopefully. Let me know if you feel like you're still being ignored in 3 or 4 months, but we're going to get back on track and you'll feel the presence. Genuinely, we've done very little pest management work in the city of New York during COVID. And genuinely, we are back now. So the only other thing I'd like to say is that there are lots and lots of vacancies and we're desperately trying to hire. And you know, as soon as we hire, we'll put people back in neighborhoods, but we haven't had any significant cuts. We've just had delays in hiring and redirection of staff. Okay, last question. I think I already answered, which was, are we working with sanitation on containerization? And do we take a stance on containerization? And, you know, I'll repeat what I said earlier, which is that we believe strongly that garbage needs to be containerized to prevent rats. But we also understand that this is a big city and operationally sanitation needs to run a certain way. They're pulling huge amounts of waste off of the curbs. And we have very narrow and dense streets and very old properties that weren't built to store the amount of garbage that we generate. So, you know, that's why I was kind of pushing people to look at the organics recycling and other recycling programs. We've got to figure out a way to minimize our waste streams, to sort our waste streams and take on more of the responsibility for sorting, managing, and maintaining our garbage moving forward. You know, just we generate way more waste than the city is built to deal with, and you know, the future of rat prevention is really figuring out how do we reduce the food waste stream and keep it away from the rats that we've been feeding for this long.
Any questions from the committee? Just as an aside, you mentioned the duplication of complaints. I had occasion to call DOT on a lamppost issue. So I made the complaint, got the number. A day later, I asked my wife to make the complaint just to like jazz it up a little bit. And they said, sorry, that complaint has already been made. We're not taking any more complaints.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way to, you know, cut down on that data.
Yeah. So yes, we do that too, but it's a manual process for us. And the reason we made it manual is because if you have a large apartment building, you might have one person call in a complaint that say, hey, there are rats in my basement. Another person might call in a complaint that says, hey, there are rats in the yard. And another one might say there are rats in apartment 10J. So we allow people to make the duplicates so we can double check them. But because of that, sometimes we get inundated literally with the same complaint over and over again. And I can, you know, give you countless examples of properties that just have the same exact complaint and called in repeatedly, and then somebody has to go in and manually close each one of those as a duplicate. So it's very labor intensive, but we did it for a reason, and that was so that we didn't miss anyone's critical interior, you know, concern. Gotcha. We do interior inspections as well as exterior. But I urge anyone with an interior rat complaint to be highly specific about how to contact you. Because the biggest and number one reason why complaints get closed for us is because the person calling in the complaint makes an anonymous complaint, and then we have no way of getting in to do a full inspection. But we take interior rats very seriously. Yeah. Anything I haven't answered for you guys? Any outstanding questions? Yeah, I know.
Blake, you want to jump in on anything on this? Anything?
No, I think Caroline did a great job of answering all of the questions. You know, I would suggest or, you know, make a motion that we write a letter to thank Caroline and the department for coming in, reiterate some of the ways that our neighbors can report rat complaints. And then I guess the substance of the letter would be number one, to support the allocation of resourcing to the rat issue, which, I think a lot of our neighbors would agree is a big one and an important one. And also reiterate how the rat issue can also be addressed by some of our board's express priorities, things like containerized trash, ensuring that new developments have a garbage plan, as well as encouraging the organics collection, in order to segregate that from the bags of trash on the street.
Yeah, I think it really is an important area of advocacy for areas with a lot of development, like Board 4. It's to really be mindful when developers come in with big projects about how that will impact simply the garbage situation. It's really an important piece that often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
And one area that I forgot to was the outdoor dining stalls, to ensure that the Department of Transportation is actually enforcing, the rat element of those stalls as well, that they're not, fostering more rat.
Cool. Kit, want to jump in on this?
Yeah, Blake, you may already be planning to do this, but I wonder if you'd also be open to further specifying with the containers, what we've said in meetings and in other letters, which is we're happy to be a pilot site. New administration, new councilman, although sort of a continuation, would love to just reiterate our openness to trying to figure out how do you repurpose parking spaces into containerized trash solutions that other cities around the world have had in place for generations.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, kid.
Yeah, cool. Jesse?
Yeah, Carolyn, I had a question just about what you had mentioned about the open restaurants program. I get that your program would be normally giving the summons or the ticket basically to the property owner. To your knowledge, though, is that the same? But that's not the same. I know that's not the same for the Department of Health, like restaurant inspections. To your knowledge, though, would they be able to inspect a outdoor dining facility similar to what they do to an interior of an eating establishment? The way they come in and doing a full check, doing a full inspection of a restaurant. Would the structure be included in their inspection or no?
My understanding right now is that they're still focusing on the interior inspection. So the majority of a food service establishment inspection by a health department inspector is going to look at the interior of that restaurant and focus on the kitchen space. They're really looking at the kitchen. And so I think we're all relying on DOT to make sure those structures are built in a way that is not impacting the neighborhood. And I know that they're thinking about it. So
yeah, I guess I just would want to, Blake, I think your last point there is key there. I think the struggle is a little bit, tell me if I'm wrong, Caroline, is what you said, is that the normally a summons for pest management, like a rat issue, would go to the owner. So I don't think we could ever get necessarily Carolyn's team to go out and inspect. I would want them to inspect the structures, but I don't know if we would be able to, because they're simply just not the owner's property. And so, but I do think there's got to be a way of saying to the city, something has got to be found in the middle, whether it be just the restaurant inspections, the Department of Health inspections have to be expanded to the structures, and they have to, like what we're all recommending, which is daily cleaning and, things like that or something. I don't have the answer yet, but I think we're clearly aware of the issue, which is that DOT is, unless there's just a massive amount of training and facilities, and DOT inspectors become basically health inspectors or pest management inspectors, we're not going to have the same level of concern. And that's always going to bring the rats and the trash and all that stuff. So some kind of language in there. I'll leave it to Blake to solve it all as
Wendy? You have a question?
It's yeah, perfect segue to my question. I don't know if it's just an inclusion in this letter, or whether it's a separate letter to DOT, or whether it's asking DOT to come in. But I feel like we should push this issue a bit on what this process is for the DOT in their inspections. I know in many ways it's a rapidly evolving situation, but the rats are rapidly evolving as well. So it's kind of like we need to push them on this to, understand how are they carrying out these inspections? How are inspections initiated? Is this something that if in my local, my block or whatever, I notice more rats at a certain restaurant, is this just 311, or is there a separate process for asking DOT to come out and inspect? As just a layperson, as a citizen, I would never think that DOT was in charge of inspecting those. So I think it would be potentially worth them coming out to give a presentation, or I think at the very least us asking just for more information on that process.
Not to be rude, but unfortunately, the answer is going to be get in line. They are in the middle of this whole process right now. And I'll just say they are overrun with, information requests. They basically refused to come to the land use committees, if you remember, when the land use component of the open restaurants program was in front of us, just because they just don't have the capacity.
Right.
I will say they're literally in the middle of their open kind of like information back and forth. They're doing a couple big events in January. They are coming to Borough Service Cabinet, which is not a public meeting, unfortunately, this Friday, which I'll be at. I think just my recommendation is that I think in terms of just connecting to this conversation about health and the impact and what can be inspected or what can be expected of DOT in terms of health and cleanliness of these structures, I think is a fine question. I think if we get into it anymore, I think we definitely need to just kind of consult with transportation planning before we start getting too far out.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm sure this might address that at least partially, but this letter could be addressed to DOT in addition to the Department of Health.
Unless you want to break it down, but I think transportation has done several of these letters regarding if you're specifically speaking about the outdoor.
Well,
haven't you done anything at transportation with a whole list of requests
a more comprehensive letter, about outdoor dining. I'm not sure that transportation would do another letter, but
no, but I'm saying it's been done, and I think perhaps the whole process really has to get out into the community. The communities themselves need to get in there at these meetings and raise their voices also on that. So let me go to Leslie, and then we'll come back and wrap up.
And you've got you got Jordan in the attendee section from Cora's.
Oh, okay, super. Leslie.
Hi, yeah, I think Jesse hit it right on the head. At the beginning of this outdoor dining night, no one really knew. That was a big question. There were so many agencies that were part of this outdoor dining that we didn't know who oversaw what. And I think, as I think Blake just said, or maybe it was you, Alan, that we're expecting DOT now to do health inspections, which is, on the outdoor dining structures, which doesn't seem like a natural fit. So Jesse, if you were saying, if they're listening to all this input now, right, would it behoove us to just do a separate letter, if it is the recommendation of this committee, I'm not saying it is, that we would like to see the outdoor dining structure, at least the health portion of it, be an extension of the restaurant, because it's a natural fit, and they do the inspection, the health inspection of the outdoor dining structure as they would the indoor dining structure, or the indoor outdoor dining structure.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I am not up to date as to that component of it. I know, like Caroline said, DOT is in charge of basically everything at this point. So I don't want to make some assumptions. I think we can ask questions. If you want to send a separate letter to DOT, but sort of being very conservative about the scope, which would be simply about, right, like you're about the kind of the impact that, they have on, street cleanliness, aka rats and things like that, and how our DOT is going to, what's DOT's, mandate / set of policies on it. I think those are all great questions to ask. And if there is a recommendation that we think that DOH inspections, whether they be restaurant focused or rat, should be involved in some level, that's the committee's prerogative. I think maybe that's a better way to do it. If the focus of Blake's recommendation for the letter is mostly about DOH and support for the rat program, I think it sort of it doesn't jive with those two topics.
Agreed. That's what I was saying. If it's a separate, yes.
You guys vote on two different letters, one specifically about DOH and rats, and then the other one to DOT about, well, what are you guys doing about this issue? And how are you going to manage it? Notwithstanding any of the transportation planning concerns about sidewalk, pedestrian use and, clearances.
Like, no, just specific health.
Stuff.
Yeah, health. I mean, Carolyn's here. I mean, Carolyn, what do you guys want that? You know what I mean? Like, how is that internally discussed? Like, would it just make sense for DOH to take over I would think, the health inspection on the outdoor structure as the indoor structure, or no? Has there been conversations that we're just unaware of that makes that not the most efficient way?
I think that the concern is that in the past, there have been mandates that we do things without funding or resources attached to them, which make them very difficult to do. So in my agency, we didn't want that mandate because outdoor dining was outside of our control, and we didn't get any extra inspectors. We already have our inspectors really drained from COVID, and so we were saying from the very beginning we'd rather stay out of outdoor dining because there was no guarantee that there would be any funding behind a mandate to do the inspections of those structures.
So it's a resource issue mostly, right?
It really, really is.
So then maybe I pull that back because I want to be
yeah.
respectful of time. Is that maybe we just stick, rather than go after DOT, right? Why don't we just focus on supporting the Department of Health program and the idea that if they are going to be, we want them involved because DOT is not the right agency to inspect for that issue, and they need to have the money to do so. So,
okay, all right, sounds like a plan. Blake, want to make a motion on this, and then we'll wrap this part of the conversation up and get Jordan into speak.
Yeah, for sure. So moved. So it's just general support or thank you support for Rad program. Aligned with some of our prior priorities in terms of containerized trash. We're more than willing to be a test site. For the containerization. Supports new residential construction having a garbage plan and the curbside organics, as ways to support rat control, as well as DOH resourcing for the increased need to monitor rats given the outdoor dining structures.
A second? There you go. Thank you, Katie. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Super. Thank you. Carolyn, this is very, very, very informative. And I've been to a couple of your Rad Academies. It's terrific. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. You guys.
Carolyn, I feel like you're doing God's work. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope, I really genuinely hope it gets better. And we're eager to be back in the neighborhoods, and feel free to reach out anytime.
Okay, before you go, I see Kit has his hand raised. Kit?
Sure.
Or are you voting?
No,
Was that a
sorry,
vote?
that's just left over from voting in favor.
Okay, all right, thank you, Kit.
Any last questions before I sign off?
No?
Okay, then I'll say
Thank you,
goodbye.
Caroline.
Thank you. Thank you very
See you.
much.
See you all. Bye-bye.
Jordan Finer,
Yeah,
hanging
hi
in there.
everyone.
How are you?
Hey, good. How are you, Alan?
Good.
Good. Caroline, before you hop off, I just want to say thank you for being here. Our office, I don't know if she's still here. Her video is frozen, but our office loves working with DOHMH. We love doing Rad Academies, and certainly, as Jesse can attest, we also love a walkthrough as well. And any good time. I just want to certainly chime in, Kit. I like the idea of sort of new alternative ways of trash storage. I'm glad that everyone here seemed to be really, really into and excited about that prospect. I'm certainly going to pass that back, especially because we're certainly interested in that, and the new administration moving in is very interested in that. So it's great to see that those ideas and things, CB4 can be an area for new and exciting ways of combating things and trying to do something different from what we've always done to fix these issues. So thanks for the conversation, and certainly going to pass it along and excited about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordan.
Yep.
Enjoy the holidays.
You as well.
All the best in the new year and in your new position. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Happy holidays, everyone.
Okay, moving forward. So we heard a lot from Streetlight this evening. I know Sarah's not here or Mara's not here. Anybody from Arts and Culture that you guys had a meet recently? Has anybody taken up the mantle on this? Discuss anything you wanted to share with us at this point? Anything good happening?
I can jump in.
Okay, but
where we kind of netted out for some next steps is we're identifying cultural organizations, like arts and cultural organizations in the district. One, just to kind of make contact and say, hey, we're here. And so hopefully that becomes a nice two-way street in terms of helping them to share their resources or events, but also to hear back from them particular needs. One of the things that we talked about was to help increase kind of just the awareness of all of the organizations that are in the district, and threw around the idea of potential like arts and culture specific newsletter. So no tangible next steps there, except it's something that we want to explore. So Jesse, I think we'll be reaching out soon just to chat through that a bit. And then something that we hope, I think, can come through like greater interaction with these organizations is also just to identify where we can be connective tissue between them. So where there are other organizations that have particular needs, like perhaps some of our arts and culture organizations actually can help to satisfy them. So anyway, that's something that we're hoping comes out of it as well. So I think we'll have more traction after the new year, but that's where I left. Katie, I know you were there too. I don't know if I missed anything or if you want to add anything.
No, I think that was a great summary. And yeah, and I think it was all about being a two-way street. And like, for example, we were talking about like, it would be great to help identify where there are tickets available for our community members, at a reduced rate, right? So that could be one thing that could be included in a sort of art specific newsletter. But we also want to understand what the needs are of these organizations and how we might be able to help. So anyway, it was really good. And I think already a lot of work has been done about coming up with this list of organizations in our district. But, I think that requires a little bit more time to finalize. And
no,
so anyway, it was a great talk.
Sounds like a great start. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone from education? Anything? Maria? No? Mercedes, anything you want to add in on some potential for education? Something, any comments about what's going on? Any thoughts about the future? Being that we have a new administration coming in and a lot of talk about a new chancellor, that's for sure. Right? So it should be an interesting year. Yeah.
There's like a bit of a delay with my sound. I was hearing like an echo for Alan's. I'm trying to respond. I am in the process and have been able to run tours. So
Say that I'm having a hard, I don't know if anybody else is, but we're having a hard time
We just lost.
with your voice.
We just lost her.
Ah, okay.
I
Well-
think we had a bad connection, unfortunately.
Okay, next year. Like they said, there's always another train coming down the track. Next year. Well, I would certainly just like to say thank you to everybody here. I think you guys have done some great work, and also things that we don't know about. I think there are a lot of members on this committee that have done some work in the public that I don't think is getting some play, but in terms of helping communities, helping people who need help. So I thank you all for that. God bless you, Jesse. Thank you. Super. And to Nellie and to Janine also. So anybody want to say a few last words as we end 2021, look forward, or we just want to say good night? Okay.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Stay well.
Bye, guys.
That is a
Good night,
motion.
everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Take care.
happy
Bye.
holidays.